Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, where we will discuss all things that impact soccer coaching across all levels and ages. Please listen, enjoy, and share your thoughts on the discussions at the Soccer Coaching Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
How are we doing, Mark?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah,
we
very
need
good.
an introduction.
Yeah, we need to mix it up. Maybe I need to introduce it, and you should go second. Yeah.
How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah. I'm still kind of. I enjoyed the Champions League final on Saturday night. It wasn't a great spectacle for the Premier Division, but it was. It still is a decent game. I was a neutral. However, I was pleased that Liverpool won. I'm happy Liverpool won. Firstly, one of my best mates is a Liverpool fan, but that aside, they've just had an amazing season, right? I think they've lost one.
It would have been hard to finish with nothing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Especially after the Barcelona comeback, the fact they lost, I think, one game in the Premier Division all season. They missed out, I think, by a point in the end. It's just an amazing season for Liverpool. I love Klopp. I love the way he goes about things. I love his enthusiasm. I think if you can take I think if you can take one thing from him and put it into your training practice on a Saturday morning, your match on Sunday is that heart and that desire and the passion is great. So I was happy that Liverpool won, but it wasn't a great game.
Final, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was strange. I mean, not uncommon that these finals are because of the pressure, I guess, and for both teams, obviously Spurs desperate to win something, which is understandable.
Yeah,
and Liverpool equally desperate and probably in some ways getting that early goal almost killed the game, didn't it?
Yeah.
In some ways, because I think they had to go against a natural instinct and try and defend the lead and just see it out as best they could, and that's what it felt like, didn't it? Just for a large part of the game. And I might be wrong, but it looked to me that Klopp quite early in the second half almost went from 4-3-3 to 4-4-2 and into 4-5-1. You could see that he was just trying to see it out and
searching for the
fair
right.
to Spurs, they kept knocking on the door, didn't they? And
they did, yeah, they did. I think it's going to be interesting now as we go into next season. Will this now push Liverpool on to kind of win the Premier Division? Like they've won a trophy now under Klopp. Will that kind of push them on? Will they have that confidence to go forward? And where does it kind of leave Spurs? They've obviously a great season for them again, making top four. Given the move to the new stadium, the limited funds that they've had to buy players, a fantastic season for them, and also getting to the Champions League final. But you just kind of wonder, right, with Spurs, they've always had this thing in the past where they've sold their best players. Will they be able to keep hold of the likes of Eriksen and Trippier and players like that over the summer? Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. I think the transfer window will be interesting, won't it?
Yes.
See what players can and what signs can be made and maybe what comes through the academy system. Which some of those young players that maybe that's the way to do things.
Yeah.
We'll see. A good interview today we've got lined up, right?
Yes.
This is off for you, really. You've instigated this one, so do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so we got Kevin Green. Kevin's is a coach, FA regional coach mentor, so he looks after a lot of mentors around the London region. He's a UEFA A licence holder. I was on one of his workshops a couple of weeks ago, and it was just superb. He spoke a lot about practice design, and I'm hoping we can bring a lot of this stuff out as we go into the interview. And I hope I hope the people listening enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the workshop kind of 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
Well, that's the hope, right? Well, I've seen him before do other things, and he's incredible. He asks great questions, challenges you back, and he makes you think about things in different ways. So we'll do our best to try and probe a little bit around practice design and bring it back to the world of foundation and grassroots football, and hopefully everyone will enjoy it.
Yes.
And we'll catch up at the end and have a chat, shall we?
Yep,
sounds
perfect.
Good. All right, hope you enjoy it. So, hi Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Really grateful for your time. Obviously, Mark and I, we have been fortunate enough to see a few presentations with the FA on different things over the last few years. Mark, more recently with one of your workshops, and we're always blown away by not just your delivery, but also your knowledge. You see one of those unique positions in which you've kind of got that academic understanding of the world of coaching and football, as well as a good practitioner as well. And you've got the best of both worlds, and we certainly feel that when we come and see you. But there'll be people out there that maybe won't have seen your workshops or aren't as close to who you are and what you do. So just to start off with, would you mind giving background to kind of what it is you do and the reasons you do what you do?
Yes. So my name is Kevin Green. I'm the FA coach mentor for London, a regional mentor for London. In terms of sort of qualifications, currently studying for my Masters in Sports Coaching. I have a PGC in Sports Coaching, hold the UEFA A licence and tutor some coach education courses, and a qualified project manager as well. I've been coaching for almost 20 years. I've been at the FA for 12 years now, and have varying experiences working in grassroots and professional clubs. 2 previous clubs were Fulham and Chelsea, respectively, in their academy departments.
Very good.
Quite impressive CV, right? Very impressive. So, and maybe just we'll come back to did you used to play football as well when you were younger?
A little bit, like everybody else, knee injuries have ruled me out. I can do a few kick-ups, that's about it. I can't run anymore.
I think they call that age, right?
Yeah.
So just tell us a little bit, like your coach mentoring. I think that's something that we're starting to see actually on Twitter in the FA, looking for mentors. What actually does that kind of mean, or how does your role kind of pan out for the FA then?
So in terms of my role, I manage a team of mentors. They're part-time staff that go into grassroots clubs and help coaches in their own environment with their own players. So that's their job. They're usually contracted for about 100 hours a season, sometimes a little bit more, depending on their availability. And their role is literally just to go in and be a sounding board. Some of them have different skill sets, so some are tutors as well as mentors. But when they go in there, it's not about passing the qualification. It's purely about helping the coach improve for the benefit of the player.
That sounds like a great initiative. What's the rationale behind that? I mean, from an FA point of view, what's the hope? I mean, it seems like it's a cracking idea, but what are they hoping to achieve by doing that?
The overarching aim is to improve grassroots coaching, which, if you improve grassroots coaching, will improve the standard of grassroots players. Yeah. So obviously, if you strengthen the base of the pyramid, further up the pyramid later on, you're going to end up with stronger players. Yeah. That's the overall aim. But really, one of the things you want to try and do is keep players in the game as long as possible with a fun, enjoyable experience.
I think we're going to come on to a bit about maybe practice design and stuff. I'm sure fun will be part of that. Mark and I have been probably in the grassroots coaching space now for maybe 5 or 6 years. Has it changed much from your perspective of things in that time? Because it feels like from us it has. Maybe that's because we've just developed our understanding, during that period. But having played football as a kid a long time ago and maybe seen some of the kids' football more recently, maybe 10 years ago, and then obviously coaching now in the space, it does feel like it's changed a bit in England in the grassroots game. Is it fair to say that's the case, and is that something that's behind the things you're doing?
I think that's fair. I said I've been involved in football for a long time. I started coaching around about 1999, so it was a good while ago now. So, did my junior team managers, it was back then, and then level 2, if you like. And the old approach used to be, if you'd like, it was a behaviourist approach, whereas, and we would all remember this from playing, if you behave, we'll get a game at the end. Yeah. And if you're naughty, that will take time off you. That was the mentality of coaches. And linked to that was always, coach education was actually, as a coach, you need to identify the mistake or the fault, step in and correct it and fix it. That was your role. That's how you pass coaching courses. Nowadays, it's more of a constructivist approach where you're actually trying to highlight some of those positives and build on those and create a positive environment for people and develop competencies rather than just develop competence in order to pass a course. There's definitely been a shift. There's definitely been a shift.
That obviously dovetails in with the youth modules and those kind of things. So is that all part of that whole package? And was that a plan the FA put in place in X many years ago, to have that holistic approach with regards to trying to improve the game at grassroots level, improve coach education, maybe work with the academies a bit closer through the EGP, those kind of things? Was it a whole package thing that come together, or is it just kind of happened organically?
No, it's definitely a strategic plan that's been put together. There's some unbelievably talented coach educators that design some of that stuff. So you'd have people like Paul Holder, John Allpress, Craig Simmons, Pete Sturgis, who I'm sure you're aware of. They were crucial or critical in terms of designing the youth modules, which then have now been absorbed into the FA Level 1, Level 2 and UEFA B courses. And to a large extent as well, the UEFA A, well, the level of technical and tactical detail at that level is a lot higher.
So our focus, generally speaking, on the podcast is to kind of be a bit selfish, and we try and just drag it down to mine and Mark's level in the sense that grassroots, foundation phase football, and we try and use the opportunity here to get an insight into ways in which we could improve our own practice, to hopefully improve the experience of the players that we look after. So I think we're going to try and delve into that world a little, if that's okay, and pick your brains around some of the things that you might be able to help us and our listeners around about good practice and what you think good practice is. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right, any questions around that?
Yeah, so I think maybe let's just dive in. I guess we've, as Scott said, we've had a lot of kind of conversations on kind of practice design. I think our very first podcast actually was dedicated to the 10 things that we see as kind of the crucial things to create a good session. And I think probably looking back at that, even maybe there were one or two things that I might...
We got 9 wrong.
We got 9 wrong, yeah. Might change. We've done well getting one right. But I guess from your point of view, from your experience, when you're putting together a session, what are the crucial things that you kind of would look to have as part of the session?
Well, obviously it depends on the context in terms of where you're working in the environment you're in. So if it's older players, you might do something different than you would do working with the younger ones.
Yeah.
But I think the overarching thing that I would always try and put into any session is serious fun. So, and I mean that sort of wholeheartedly. I want my sessions to be fun and enjoyable, because if they're fun and enjoyable, people are going to come back. And it doesn't matter whether you're an adult elite player or you're an under 5.
Yeah.
Something that's fun, you're going to want to do it again and again and again. So I always ask myself the question is, who was I when I was a certain age? So if I was 9, who was I and what did I want? And I always go back to actually, what do they want? The reason they're coming to my sessions is likely going to be that they want to play.
Yeah.
So I try and design my sessions around what they want and what they need.
Yeah.
So in terms of what they want and what they need, bits of the session are for them, and the way I see it, bits of the session are for me.
Yeah.
So the bits that for me are the ones that I can really control and try and shape, and that's the bit that I've spoken about previously, where I called it the balanced football diet. So the bits that they might want would be, the nice bits, if you like, maybe the chicken or the chips.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm adding the carrots and the peas. So sometimes that's my role, is to almost be the one who brings the stuff that they need to a session. So those are the things I'd consider, whether it's young or old. How do we work with individuals, but let's just keep it as fun as possible.
Yeah.
We've just written a little bio for our website that we've started, and I'm going to claim this one straight so I haven't stole this.
Yeah.
If you're looking out, I've got serious fun is my philosophy for training.
You've been saying that for a while, actually.
It's a good way. I'm sure I stole it from somebody else, but it probably was you when you won workshops a couple of years ago. But yeah, it's important to get that balance right, because I don't think it can be just fun in the sense that it's not a playground, And I say to our youngsters that this isn't the school playground, but likewise it's not your maths lesson, so you've got to find a space in between it. You mentioned about trying to almost step in the shoes of the players themselves. So do you think empathy is important then as a coach?
Definitely, and you have to understand where they're coming from and why they come. Working in London is very different from working out in Wiltshire, for example, or somewhere quite leafy and green. So understanding why they come is quite an important bit, and putting yourself into their perspective, and understanding the social dynamics is quite an important bit. People forget about that. So if you look at a social group or a group of kids, let's say you've got 10 kids, well, I might have a relationship with you, but equally you have a relationship with me. So, my lens is that I think the relationship's really positive. But last week, I was disciplinarian, and your lens has now changed. So people often forget that within that relationship there are 2, and then all of a sudden my relationship with another player comes into account, and their relationship, the relationships between you 2 would come into account. So within one coaching session, there are almost hundreds of relationships that you need to be aware of as a coach, and you need to be very skilled in terms of trying to manage that and observe those things. So often, in terms of the empathy bit and understanding players, I would always, at the beginning of a session, the first thing I do is I look to assess the moods, assess behaviours, assess the environment. That's the first thing I do, and I normally do that through a game or some sort of activity where I know I'm going to get buy-in from them, and it's just going to be something that's fun, something that anyone who turns up can join in, whether it's Wembley singles or doubles or multiple games of 60 seconds or whatever it might be. I'll just do something that's fun, and it gives me a chance to just assess and see where they're at, go around, talk to people, be that social butterfly, and just have a chat with people and see where they're at.
Yeah, I think we do something similar in our training sessions, both of us. Scott kind of looks after the under 7s, I look after under 10s, and we have like free play at the beginning of the session, and I think it's just great. You let the player just They just play. They turn up. We set the pitches up. They play for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. They do manage it themselves. You step in if you have to step in, but generally just let them manage the game. And you can stand back and you can talk to the parents and deal with that side if you need to. But you can also observe them, and you can see some players that are maybe, you can see they've had a late night, or you can see whether some players are super up for it. They haven't played for weeks, so they're like gagging to get out there and play.
We do it as small-sided games, so it's not like 10 against 10. We try and do it at 3 against 3 kind of max, so you really get to see, they get a good warm-up at their age. That's probably okay for them just to go and start playing. But yeah, it's the observation from the coaches. We just try and watch what's going on. You can see if little Jimmy's not having, he's going to be a bit grumpy today. He's going to be a bit of a pain, or someone's. Or also, if you might set a bit of casual homework, a trick or a skill, and that you can see if they're doing that in the things. They know coach is watching, and it's good to see. You can highlight some good practice as well.
Yeah.
So,
and it helps with behaviour. The one question coaches always get asked is, can we have a game?
Starting with the game.
If you turn around and you say, look, the behaviourist approach was we always finish with a game.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that question very rarely comes up in any of my sessions.
Yeah.
Because we've started with one.
Yeah. And I guess the more you feel like a game through the whole session, the more it can, then the less chance you've got of getting that. And also, if the players are engaged around whatever they're doing, they're going to work a bit harder, and you probably get more out. They'll get more out of the practice they're doing because they're engaged in it rather than just waiting for the treat at the end.
Yeah. And it's amazing. You have a game first. The players turn up early. They're never late. Right? They're there early, even though they get a lift from their parents because they're that young. They're still there early, ready to go.
We do it crafty because we're first on our Astro booking, or even on the grass space we've got. Our train starts at 8:45 in the morning, goes to 10:15. So we say that's the training time, but free play starts from 8:30, and you can pretty much guarantee by 8:25 everyone's there. And that one will go 20 minutes of free play before the session's even started. So when you bring them in then to talk about the session, what else you've got 5 minutes for a little drink and just to see how they're doing and things, they're okay to relax for 5 minutes, have a chat with you and stuff. Then you get into the session in earnest, and they're kind of in a good space to learn.
Yeah. And sort of like a line with that is, somebody said something to me early on when I first started playing golf. He made a real simple comment, and I'm not by any means a good golfer, but he just said, look, you won't learn golf by standing on the driving range. You need to go out on the course and you need to play.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, there's no rough on the driving range.
It's all nice. Even wine starts looking right on the driving range.
I've seen your golf.
Yeah, I know exactly. I'm waiting for that. I thought I'd get him in first.
So if our overall aim is to help players get better at playing the game, then they're going to need more time playing the game. So whether it's free play or starting with a game, we need to come up with ways of maximising the very limited amount of time that we have with these children and young people.
Yeah. You mentioned a really good thing, which I never thought about before, about the relationship being two ways, and the sense that actually your perception might be different to what the player's perception is of that relationship. I never thought about that before. You feel like as a coach, you've got a good rapport with your players or not, but you've got a sense of where you are with them. That doesn't necessarily mean they feel the same way about you, does it?
No, you're right, and I think it's a good point. I think I find that some players, if you've got maybe 10 or 15 in your squad, maybe 75% of them you've got really good relationship, you're on the same page with them, they turn up and they're lively, you have a bit of a joke with them before they play, and then there's maybe 25% that are actually a little bit quieter. You don't know what they're actually thinking, but I still try hard to kind of build that relationship, but it's never that easy. And the other players, you're never too sure what they actually think on that.
Reserved ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're thinking about it a bit more.
Sometimes you might just have to talk about stuff that's not related to football at all.
Yeah, school, anything like that. Yeah.
Favourite wrestler? That one comes up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, The Undertaker.
Hulk Hogan.
If it's okay, we're getting some more involved in the actual session practice, but I wonder, do you have a design template for your sessions? I mean, do you have a structure that you pretty much follow, or are you quite fluid in the sense it does depend on the age and the group, or would you start with like a free play or a game and then go into a whole part whole or a constant variable random? Do you have a structure that you practice regularly, or do you?
So if I'm working with a foundation phase, my general approach will be whole part whole. Largely down to what they want. If I was working in an environment where we're preparing for competition with older age groups or organised teams, then sometimes it's different. So and I mentioned before when we spoke about football, the balanced football diet. Working in London, you're lucky if you get a large amount of space, or if you can even get space that might tie into a competition cycle. I.e., we might have a space on a Friday evening, but our game is on a Saturday morning. So you have to be quite careful about what you do in terms of training load and how much you're putting through the players. So you do have to take that into account. So one thing I would look at is when is training, how much rest time do we have in between, when is competition, and then when would be the rest days, etc., following into the next training session. So I would consider that in terms of my session design. Yeah. But if I'm working in a competition cycle, I'll be happy to use constant practices. Equally happy to use variable and random practices. It depends on the players and the needs that we've got. But equally, if I'm working in the 11v11 competition side of things, I would use constant practices to get the pictures out that I'd want the players to understand.
Yeah.
And when I've spoken before about this stuff is, you might need to consider the environment in terms of weather. We work in England. You can't always do the stopping stuff when it's really cold. Yeah. So, for example, when I worked in a Girls Centre of Excellence, our training schedule was designed to cover defending at the beginning of the year, from sort of September through to early December, November, December. That was our focus. There was obviously other outcomes, but the reason being was we weren't going to coach the girls any defending in the winter months. It was going to be lots of ball mastery work, small-sided games, combinations. That was the stuff we were going to focus on.
Stuff that's more physically demanding, they're going to stay warm.
Yeah. But we planned it that way deliberately in terms of scheduling how it would work.
It's a good point to think about. It's like having a plan as a coach, but if it doesn't marry up with other environmental factors, that can take away the session, however good the plan might be. Yeah. I wonder if we do think about that enough as coaches about things like the weather and time of the day. And
I think you probably do when you get there. Maybe not in advance of it. You might turn up and it's a windy day and your goals have been playing all over the place.
Would have been England, isn't it? It's never going to go.
Yeah. I mean, equally, if you look at our street games over here, we use things like World Cup singles or doubles, and they can be quite physically demanding.
Yeah.
I had a Spanish colleague at the FA a few years ago who taught me a game Rapido, which we played recently, and we had some screamers on the recent workshop. But that would be a game where you do a little bit of exercise, but you get quite a bit of rest.
Yes.
And that came from Spain, and that was probably formed because of the weather.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to do the Wembley singles and doubles the way that we would.
Yeah. It's a brilliant game, Rapido. Actually, if I'll try and find it if there's a video on YouTube or something, and we put it onto the Twitter feed. But it's a very good game. Yeah, just coming back to whole part whole, just to make sure maybe not all of our listeners actually understand what whole part whole is. You couldn't just kind of just describe that for us, could you?
So it's a game or a game-like activity. Yeah. So for me, it might be a smaller sided game of football where you're playing 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s, whatever it might be. That leads into the focus of your session. Then you do so that would be the bit that would be for them, the players bit.
Yeah.
A bit like your free play, if you like. You could use that as the bit where they come along and they get more game time.
Yeah.
Leads into your session. Then the session bit would be the bit where I would do my coaching, if you like.
Yeah.
And then we'd go into the games at the end. So it'd be a match or a match type situation. A training session, maybe a few different practices, and then into games at the end, where it might be me maybe potentially coaching within a game or setting individual challenges or some challenges for units or a team it might be.
Yeah, so you might have constraints in that kind of final whole to make sure you bring through what was done in the part practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we'd look to try and link it together rather than it just being three different entities.
Yes, it's a good way of doing it, actually. Yeah. And if we just take a little step back then. So obviously we kind of talking about the kind of grassroots structure. In terms of themes that you would kind of look at for grassroots, like there's certain themes that we would run. We look at attacking overloads, defending overloads, passing, all of those kind of things. And I guess that leads into maybe you'd have a syllabus, and maybe it's not quite that structured, not everyone's that structured. But what would your kind of, I guess if we think about the foundation phase, what would be kind of key themes for you to bring out in training? And maybe not every time each week, but if you kind of done it over a number of weeks or a season.
So one of the quotes that I love a quote, I'm sure you remember from the workshop. But one of the quotes...
And a stat, right?
And a stat, you know me. One of the quotes that stood out for me, and I think it came from Ben Bartlett, who I respect greatly, he's a very, very good coach educator. The player is the syllabus, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So if you take that mantra and you look at it, then you're designing your sessions or your schemes of work, however you want to label it, around what they need in terms of their development.
Yeah.
So, for example, it could be that 1 week I'm working on an individual player, my number 9, for example.
Yeah.
I don't like to have a long list of roles and responsibilities for my striker. I try and make it as simple and clear as possible, so that when we're having discussions, they're really clear on what their job is, and the other players will understand how they link. So it might be that 1 week I'm working my number 9, and I use my 3 S's. So first job of the striker is to secure possession to allow the rest of the team to advance up the pitch and join in. That would be my first one. The next S that I might use is, can you shoot?
Yeah.
I'm not asking them to score, because I know how hard it is to score goals. But
that is an S though.
Can you shoot? Yeah, just can you shoot? And if you can't shoot, and you can't shift it and shoot, can you supply or set someone else up that can shoot? That's their job.
Yeah.
And then I might link that, even potentially in the same session, but maybe the following week to one of the other players. So it might be that I'm now looking at my 10. So I'm joining individuals up with units. So my 10, I might use a different letter. I might go with the letter G. Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to ask my 10 to do when we get possession of the ball is, can you get in between the lines?
Yeah.
That's the idea with the 10. Just occupy those little pockets, those spaces. Once you've got in between the lines, can you go for goal? So again, we're trying to create that goal scoring opportunity. Yeah. And if you can't go for goal, can you give it to someone that can?
Yeah.
So again, all I'm asking them to do is have sort of three key focus points, and then that was the in possession stuff. So I might look at if the following week, we've done the 9 and 10 in possession, but what happens when we lose it at the front? We've gone for goal, we've now not scored. So the first thing I'm going to ask my 9 to do is shut them down. Yeah. There's another S.
Yeah.
Or with my 10, it might be we've lost it, get it back.
Yeah.
And really, it's just those little things. When you start using letters and real small role profiles for players, their job becomes easy, and half-time team talks become easy. And it might be that I use posters in the changing room so they know exactly what their job is. Yeah. But these are your 3 things to do in possession. This is what you need to do when you're out of possession.
Yeah, I think they're excellent, and you went through that in the workshop a couple of weeks ago. Actually, that stuff, and at the time I thought it was the first time I've seen it. And I thought, wow, that's impressive. And I think you could do that even with under 7s, under 8s at 5-a-side. You could have it's that simple. You could do for your backs players, for your forward players. You could just do it be that straightforward. These are the kind of things we want you to focus on. So you're not telling them what they need to do every time they get it. They've still got to make that decision, but they know exactly these are the things. I think it's a really good way of doing it.
We love lists of 3, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Always think of 3 things to get across. Yeah. But that is really, that's really good, and it is something that probably transcends across all age groups, because I can see our little under 7s quite easy picking up 3 things with the ball. That's what you do in that position. Well, we have 3 things as a team that we do, but looking at player specific would be a good thing. What's your thoughts then around the younger age groups and the amount of time we should spend on things like ball mastery work as opposed to maybe to passing the ball or defending? And I know, again, it probably is a case, it's horses for courses and it's a bit different, but just generally speaking, maybe from your own personal point of view, or maybe from the point of view, whatever you feel more comfortable talking about, how would you see, because we get asked quite a lot through Twitter, there are only 3 now, about, you really wish to be getting the boys on the ball, just playing, and there's a Glenn Hoddle interview that talks about that a lot, and I understand that. But we've got an obligation as well to try and develop the person and the player, but also teams. Not to necessarily about the results of the game. It's not important to my club as a priority by any stretch. But certainly trying to be competitive in games and getting the players to work together, because we're not running an academy. We are trying to run a grassroots football team as such. So how would you address some of those challenges, and what advice would you have for us?
I have an opinion on different things. So my first love is the ball when I play. And you go on any coaching course, you watch anyone. The first thing they do is they go straight to the bag. Nobody runs and does warm ups. Yeah. Everybody loves the ball. That's come from somewhere. It's probably come from mastering it in your back garden or wherever it was, playing with your brothers and sisters or your friends. So any time you can spend on the ball and developing that love is critical. Now, if you look at culture nowadays, kids don't really go to the park and just play with their friends. Everything's organised. When it becomes organised, it becomes often quite coach-led. So if it is going to be a coach-led type activity, then can we make it fun? in some regard, whether it's, look, we're going to do lots and lots of ball work, but we're going to do it in a manner where it's competitive. So we're going to do some 1v1 stuff. And the reason I say is, I'm not a fan personally of unopposed ball mastery and tricks and skills and stuff like that, because in a game you're very often unopposed, so you might as well try and learn how to do some of this stuff with some sort of interference or something affecting a decision. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody trying to tackle you straight away or steal the ball from you, just someone who's going to be applying some form of pressure or changing your picture so you can't just be looking down at the ball the whole time. So that would be my first starting point. In terms of how you might make it fun, I saw a guy years ago, and I worked out in the States, a guy called Dr. Gary Russell. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He was a child psychologist out there, but he had a love for soccer, and his company was MLS Camps. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. So they were similar to a British company called Challenger Soccer. They go out there, British English or British coaches go out there and do some coaching. Yeah. And one of the things that he did was he spoke about developing a practice culture away from organised coaching, which was, this was back in 2002, so this has been going on a long time. And he came up with this rhyme, football rhyme, and it was really simple, numbers 1 through to 10 for kids to learn how to master the ball in foundation phase. And it was number 1, go for a run. So the coach would shout out the number, the kids would experiment, try different things. Number 2, under your shoe. So what that allowed kids to do was or the coach to do, was be able to recognise who's taking small touches, keeping that ball nice and close. If it was miles away, and obviously the touch was too large, you can go in and do some individual coaching. So number 2 was under your shoe. An advancement on number 2 might be, like dribbling with the sole of your shoe, like rolling it, Maradona turns, so that you could differentiate with some of that stuff. And it was really interesting. Number 3 was on your knee. How many juggles could you do on your knee? Number 4 was sit on the floor. So what he would do is the players would be dribbling around. He'd shout number 1. Number 4, the aim was to stop the ball and sit on it as quick as you could. Little things like that. It was just all about ball mastery. And what he was trying to do was get the kids to go away and practice this stuff at home. Yeah. Whereas, lots of kids aren't just going to go home, I'm just going to practice a Cruyff turn. But if they can go off and have, either shout the numbers themselves or remember them or get someone else to do it for them, you can develop that practice culture. Number 5, you had to do toe taps on top of the ball while singing the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. Little things like that. But when you're working with little kids, they love all that stuff. Yeah. And then it became, right, now you've done your toe taps, can you do step overs around the ball while doing it? All right, now can you do that while you're moving? So all of those things built a little practice culture. And I've seen some unbelievably talented players who've gone off. They started off with that really early, but they've gone off and practiced these things. Number 6 was do some tricks. It was either make your own up or copy a friend. Freestyle, yeah. All those little things that we see nowadays, it's really popular. Number 7 was up to heaven. So you'd throw the ball up in the air as high as you could initially, and it might just be, if they're really novices, clap your hands and catch it. But then it was, right, actually throw it as high as you can. Now, as it comes down, can you control it without it bouncing? Brilliant. All right, now it's bounced, can you control it? So all of those things developed a real nice, well-rounded player, but it was all very much at the experimentation level of the kid. Number 8 was tag a mate or high five a mate, so you'd go off and give someone a high five to social corner, but you turn it into a competition, right, tag a mate. So then all of a sudden it became, well, who's trying to get me and who can I get? So I'm trying to avoid everybody, but then I'm equally trying to get people at the same time, all with a ball at my feet. Number 9 was It's All Mine. We all know this one as King of the Ring, where you keep your ball and kick everyone else's out. And number 10 was Juggle It Again. So, knees, feet, whatever. How many could you do in a row? The stuff that we all used to practice as kids. So if you look at taking someone who understands kids and understands sport, and then they've put stuff together almost in an academic or theory meets practice type way, there's a real simple practice there that can develop a practice culture where kids can go off and do stuff on their own. And it makes sense, because if you look at children, one of the things that they learn in their earliest forms, nursery rhymes. Rhymes are really powerful in terms of kids. So that was the idea behind his approach to working. He also used a lot of stories in his sessions, especially working with the younger ones, depending on what was current at that time in terms of TV, SpongeBob was a big one in the States back then, stuff like that. So using characters, because there was a lot of stuff, working with kids who were under 7, they associate with, characters on TV and cartoons, whereas kids who are 7 and a bit older, they start to associate with real people. And if you ever work with kids, you'll understand, you start to see that actually. When they get 7 or 8, they've got the boots, the kit, the haircut, the earring, if it was Ronaldo. But prior to that, the kids, they're not really into that sort of image. And it was just really interesting and fascinating getting a chance to work over in the States. 13 different states from New England all the way down to Texas and the Midwest.
And that was back in 2002.
Back in 2002.
Gary was doing that. I think what a clever way to try and get the players to engage in practice outside of your sessions.
Yeah.
Because if there's one argument about the unopposed stuff that's hard to kind of challenge back on, it's the fact, well, actually, the players can do that in their own space if they want to. Yeah. But then our job probably then, if you are going to accept that as an argument, is to say, well, we've got to try and create that mindset in which they want to go and do that. And it's funny how you can remember the 1 to 10 like that, because it just works and it's all right. So it just works. Yeah.
And I think you can make that into a player-centred approach as well. You can have the players leading that kind of bit of the exercise, right? Yeah. So they can call out the numbers, and the coach can just step back. Yeah. And that would just make life easy. Just on the unopposed thing, we've had a lot of discussions across the podcast and even more outside of the podcast on it. I think generally we're on the same page. I think I still believe there's a place for some unopposed work. It would be a small part of the session, and then you would go into an opposed practice, maybe like a one-on-one, so you kind of start to learn some of the things or practice some of your maybe technical grooving or a phrase like that, and then you put it into like an opposed, so you're actually then testing actually how you developing, how you're learning. So I think there's still space for it if it's right for your players, but I think to the point, you need to make it fun and
that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, and engage with the children. We've seen at an academy, they do unopposed ball skills. They do it for like half an hour, and the guy can just he keeps the ball
engagement.
He keeps them all engaged. It's like quite amazing. I don't know how he does it, but for half an hour, he just keeps them going, like challenges, games, and he can just keep them going. So
he'd love that 1 to 10, wouldn't he?
He would love that 1 to 10, actually. Yeah.
To stay on that one.
Yeah.
I guess it relates a little bit to what you were saying, Kevin. In the sense of trying to develop some kind of player ownership to the training. How important do you think player ownership is? And would it be part of your sessions thinking about, okay, how can we get the players to be empowered in the session? And if it was, are there techniques and methods you use to go about that?
Yes. So in terms of importance, real simple, it's the most important thing in my opinion. And the reason for that is it's not my team, it's their team. It's as simple as that. For whatever, I could leave the team tomorrow, whatever. Or it's their team. And fundamentally, it comes down to, what's my job? Is it to develop footballers, or is it to develop people? I see my role as developing people or good footballers who are good people who happen to be good at football. It's not about just developing good footballers. It can't be that. How do I go about doing it? Well, you'd have things like team talks, handing over responsibility, sometimes for them picking the team. It makes me laugh when coaches pick the teams all the time. What makes someone who's maybe been on a 2 or 3 day coaching course all of a sudden become an expert in football? I'm by nowhere an expert, and that's the one thing that I've learned through coaching, qualifications and experience. The more I know, the more I realise I don't know, and it's that simple. So you have to kind of get some feedback from where they feel their strengths are at. And like I said, look, I feel my relationship with you is this, but they feel their relationship with me is something different. But we can strengthen those relationships by actually having a good conversation and handing some responsibility over. I think that's quite an important bit for me. So developing real good people is the most important thing, not just developing good footballers. Yeah. And the reason for that is the chance of them becoming professional footballers, I think, is something like 0.012% or something like that. But the chance of them becoming members of your community was 100%. So as a grassroots coach, my job is to actually help them become really good people who might be able to develop some transferable skills that will help them through life. And if you were to define success, it's not how many, those little plastic trophies that I've got stashed away somewhere in the garage. Actually, how many of these guys are going to invite me to their wedding in 15 years?
Yeah. We spoke about that quite a lot as well. We haven't articulated as well as you articulated, that's for sure. But we definitely of the same view, and we've spoken about that. It's not just about the football. And as you say, it's such a small chance that these players are going to be made professional footballers.
We have our first three values for our training sessions that we have with the Ploytons under 5s, but certainly under 6s, and still going now and it's in this order: it's respect, effort, and then fun. So in training, that's the first thing. Football doesn't come into it. It's you respect the players who position each other, the parents. You bring the effort because we can't do that, and without the effort, it wouldn't be fun. But then you bring the fun, and we just think that it's about the person first, and then we come about the football afterwards. And I think we've seen it ourselves that when you get the character right, and also that part of that's confidence and resilience, all those kind of things, the football comes a lot easier anyway. Yeah. Trying to get the football out of a player that's maybe not quite confident or not resilient or hasn't got the necessarily right level of respect you want to see from a young player, then the football almost gets buried in the nonsense around that.
Yeah. There was one thing we used to do years ago. I used to coach a team called Westway many years ago. Took them right through from under 9s up to under 16s. Unbelievable group of lads. Honestly, some of the nicest kids you would ever come across. Real interesting area, Ladbroke Grove, so millionaires around that way, Shepherd's Bush, but equally kids, who had very little, but all of them brought together by football. One of the things that we did was you'd have to pay for your subs on a Friday night. It was a Friday night league, midweek league, running in North London. But grassroots, unbelievable idea as well. Having a midweek league, they could play on a weekend if they wanted to for a different team, or parents could have the weekend off if they were lucky. Yeah. But when they paid their subs, the subs, if we had extra players, the fees we'd have maybe £4 or £5 left over. The players at the end of the game, what they would do, even at under 9, was they would nominate a player of the match, a man of the match. With that £4 or £5, whatever was left over, it would be their job to decide which charity they donated the money to. Wow. So even from 8, 9 years old, what we were trying to instill in them is, look, it's about giving. Yeah. It's not about always taking. So right from that age, all the way through, and we've still got kids now. Now we've got kids who are 22, 23, who are trustees of charities.
Wow, because it shows you the impact it can have, right, when you put that kind of those thought processes in at an early age, and it's not all about me actually. And what I'm sure from a competitive sports point of view, the better as a sports person you are, as the ones that realise it's not about you, it's about everything else around you, and the more you can contribute to that, the better you're going to be. Listening to advice, taking on advice, working hard. So what age do you think, because again, I think you talk about these things and we're totally on board with it, but things like a team talk then, or leading a team talk, or picking the formations, what would you say was the youngest you could do that?
You see it all the time in training sessions, even now, through the coaching courses that have come about. So one of the things that often comes up in a training session is, right, you guys go off and come up with a team plan. So my question that I ask coaches is, if you're willing to do that in training, why are you not willing to do that in a game? And they do that even from under 9s, under 10s. Right, I'm going to chat to this team. You guys, you've got 5 players. We've got 6. How are you going to stop us defending? Go and have a chat about it. How are you going to stop us from scoring? So little things like that. If you're willing to try and experiment stuff like that in training, when are you going to be brave enough to put it in a game? Yeah. So it's their team. Yeah. You have to define what it is you want them to develop. Is it just the football stuff, or is it actually the leadership, the communication skills, problem-solving skills? Yeah. All of those things are critical, but you can't just do it in training.
I think we've set ourselves a target for what will be under 8s next season, so we do exactly that. We give the boys an opportunity in training to often have little team talks, agree how they're going to play, set the formations. We do that quite a lot, but I've never done it in a match on the Sunday.
Yeah. Now, you're not the only one.
But you're dead right. But there's 2 things there. First of all, I think we often underestimate just how intelligent and smart these kids are, and how they can rise up to the occasion, given an opportunity in a nice environment to make mistakes. But also, why start under 9s? Why not start earlier? And okay, it might take a little while to get there, but surely they're going to be in a better position for under 9s by starting earlier than waiting to under 9s anyway. So okay, it might not work for the first few goes, 6 months, even a season, but they're going to be better at the end of that season. They would have been starting at the following season regardless. And you know what? My bet now is that they probably smash it almost straight away because their kids are pretty smart. And if they make a mistake, they learn pretty quick and they don't often do it again, especially in their own environment where they've got the peer pressure to kind of make sure they're doing things right.
The reason that I sort of chucked that one out there is, again, sort of coming from quotes, if you like, but somebody told me when Brian Clough, or one of his most famous team talks, was he walked into a dressing room at half time and they were losing. He walked in, opened the door and said, "Lads, I'm sorry I picked the wrong team today," and walked out. The players didn't just sit there in silence. The players stood up and started talking to each other and self-diagnosed problems. He didn't fix the problems, but he prompted them to fix the problems. And I think that's part of our role. Sometimes it's understanding the psychology of the people we're working with, but allowing them to fix the problems.
So on that one then, and this is quite typical, I think I've seen a few things recently around this, and I could well be guilty of this. And I appreciate you work for the FA, so it might be a tricky one to answer. But
am I allowed to say no comment?
You might want to, I don't know. But is there a danger of us overcoaching? Do you think, is it fair to say? And I think I'm guilty sometimes. I think you just end up maybe giving too much. I mean, I very much believe in giving the problem rather than the solution and, facilitate rather than anything else. But I still worry that I overcoach, and I see people do a lot more coaching than I do. How can we monitor that as coaches, and how can we make sure that we don't go past that line of maybe overcoaching our players?
So I'm going to drop another name in. A person who was a big mentor for me is a guy called Richard Horner. He was my boss at the FA when I first started. Unbelievably good coach and coach educator, fantastic. But somebody asked me about him about a year ago, and they said, "Well, what is it that makes him so good?" And I thought about it, and I said, Richard, actually, he gives me more questions than he does answers. And that makes me go away and be curious and develop myself. He could give me the answer, I'm sure he could, because he's a very intelligent man, fantastic, like I said, on the grass and in the classroom. But what he does is he prompts me to go away and do stuff for myself. For me to solve the problem, for me to look for a way that would suit me. So sort of coming back to your question, I think that's something that we have to be quite careful of in terms of overcoaching. He could easily overcoach me in some of these things. But then I just become a mini replica of him. I was born an individual. You shouldn't die a replica, as they say. So what I'm looking for is I'm trying to put my own spin on something. So I might take some bits that I see other people do and then put my own spin on it. And getting the balance right is really hard when it comes to overcoaching or undercoaching. Undercoaching is one of those things where it might be more down to perception. People see you and they think, actually, you're just facilitating a session. Don't forget how many of us learn how to do stuff. We weren't taught. We learned. We just went out and we experimented and we played. Who taught Messi at a young age how to dribble? Would somebody find whoever that was and bottle it? Who taught George Best? Who taught Maradona? These guys have gone off. They've picked stuff up. They've learned. They've experimented. And as a coach, sometimes that's what we've got to do. And in terms of overcoaching, sometimes we can often tell that by the players' reaction to when we're stepping in or how often we're stepping in. And what I do is, in my mentoring role, if I'm out observing coaches, I look for two different areas. One is fact and one is opinion. And it's really hard to find facts in football. But the facts are, you stopped it this many times. Each stoppage lasted this amount of minutes, for example. My opinion is some of the other stuff, what you said or technical detail, whatever it might be. But the facts are there in terms of stoppages. So as a coach, I'm really conscious of how often I stop it and for how long I stop it for. In terms of getting a ratio right, I don't want to be talking for longer than a minute. I've got children.
They've gone off 30 seconds, right?
Exactly. I've got, 8, a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old. If I try and talk to them for longer than a minute, the attention's gone. So it's really important in terms of, if we are going to stop it, keep it short and sweet. And if we are going to stop it, don't do it too often.
And how do you, so then when you're talking about stopping it, this is obviously interventions, and is your kind of practice then you would go in and stop the whole game, or would you pick out to speak to individual players, or how would you go about it?
The first thing that I always look at is, does it need to be stopped? So could I have a chat with someone while something's going on? The other thing is, why do we always stop it on a negative? Often as coaches, we don't stop it and just go, hey, did you all see how amazing that was? And put the spotlight on the child or the player and really try and make them feel good. Build the confidence up rather than stop it. Put the negative highlight on it. Oh, God, the camera's on me now. Everybody's watching me. Coach is going to tell me what I did wrong. we're having an adverse effect on the people that we're supposed to be developing.
Yeah.
So, do I need to stop it? Does everyone need to hear it? That would be the first thing I need to consider. Is it information that they all need?
Yeah.
If it's not, maybe I can just pull that person out, have a chat with them. Or I could get onto the pitch and just talk to them side by side.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And I think it might be that if the same situation arose, and it doesn't often arise identical, does it, in the game? It might be, even in training, it might be something different but similar. But the player might get it right next time anyway. You've got to give it a couple of goes to see. And I think if we jump in too early, and again, I've done this lots of times, you just think, I bet if it happened again, it might have been alright the second time, they might have found their own solution to the problem, or they might have 2 or 3 goes just naturally, just for it to happen, to find out their own way of fixing it. And also, I also think sometimes that when we offer a solution to players, that's our solution to the problem, and it might be a great solution for us, but they might have had a better solution or a different way of solving the problem, and just giving that space for it to kind of happen naturally might surprise us. We might learn a few things as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The idea could be right, and I'll go back to one of my quotes again, if you like. The invention of the light bulb didn't come from the evolution of the candle. If you wanted more light, generally you made a bigger candle.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line, someone has done something different.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be looking for. Who's thinking a little bit differently? So the idea might be right, but the execution wasn't. Now, when you look at players, often what will happen is the coach will coach a person on the ball who's made the error.
Yeah.
But it might not always be that person who's on the ball. We very rarely looking for the stuff that's happening off the ball, the movement that's going on away from it, and fixing that bit, which is equally, if not more important, because 95% of the time you don't have the ball in the game anyway.
Yeah.
So the movement's really important, but often the coaching points come out around the technical aspects of the execution of the pass, rather than the fundamental error might have been the body shape on the receiver, for example, or getting out of line, playing hide and seek with the defender.
Yeah, and I think the point you make around stopping it for a positive is a really good point, and I think you just see when you do that, you see the player's reaction when you do that. It's like you can just see his chest is puffed out, and he's like really happy and really appreciates it. It is priceless to see that, and it should be done more. It's not done enough. I don't do it enough. I don't recognise that, but it should be done more.
If you look at what happens in schools, so this is a behaviour management approach in schools, and you're doing it right now. You're sitting very nicely with your arms crossed.
Yeah.
What does the kid next to that person do? They sit very nicely with their arms crossed and their fingers on the lips, and all of a sudden that works its way along.
Yeah.
The teachers are actually, you're doing a great job, fantastic, and they might give you some detail around what it is that you're doing really well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind some of that praise. The person next to you thinking, and they learn from their peers. Yeah. But it's just how you want to manage behaviour in your sessions.
Yeah, it's great point.
And I personally feel that's an area where coaches could do with more support in terms of behaviour management, because it's not easy when you've got large numbers of kids.
Yeah, and I think it is asking the question as well. It's not just kind of steaming in there and giving feedback. It's, as you pointed out, it's actually asking the question, because you don't always get the response that you would expect. Even I know Sunday, we were at a tournament Sunday with the under-7s, and one of the players could have passed back to the goalkeeper because we encouraged them to recycle and keep the ball, and he tried to make a pass down the line, and I initially thought, oh, that's the wrong decision, but actually it was the right decision, because he made it was a great pass down the line, right?
You made a point to him, didn't you? You said in the end, I wouldn't have done that, but you showed you made your decision, and it was a good decision, and you executed it well.
Yeah.
On that one then, so that's my next question was going to be then, decision making. I mean, I'm sure it is important, but how important is it for you in the sessions? And do you think as coaches we could do more, or is there ways in which we can make sure we've got decision making on our radar when we're planning our sessions?
So linking it back to practice design, one of the things I would always encourage coaches to do is to include a goal in their session, a form of goal, and not always just a way of scoring in terms of 5 passes equals a goal. I mean, an actual physical goal, and the reason for that is that affects decision making. When I'm defending a goal. If I'm trying to score, I'm trying to score in a goal. So even if you're doing a rondo, could you potentially put a couple of mini goals out there? Those are really critical, because that's what the game is all about. It's about scoring and defending. So if you don't include stuff like that in there, or even follow your pass type activities, you can use patterns that go towards a goal rather than it just being about, look, we're going to work on this pattern, or we're just going to do a rondo keep ball for the sake of it. Well, if I'm a defender and I win it back and I've stolen it, my job is, I've now got to do something with it. So if there's a goal involved, even in a rondo, well, all of a sudden now it becomes a transition. So I was attacking, I've now lost it, I've now got to adjust and defend one of those goals quickly.
And how much more mentally stimulating is that? Suddenly it's such a much better game, isn't it? You've got more work rate there, more of a reason to go and try and work harder to get the ball and do things.
Yeah. You've got a way of getting out as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's the bit that, being that person who's in the middle.
Yeah, that's the incentive, right?
You're just hoping that you can get out.
Well, it comes back to the fun factor, doesn't it? I think as soon as the players, especially young players, see goals, then they're straight away more engaged than if they don't see goals.
But even I think they enjoy more when there's decisions to be made.
Yeah.
More than one thing to do. I think they get a bit bored when you're just doing, you kind of know what the one task is like in a rondo. I've got to get the ball and I'm out. It's like, well, okay, it's fine. And some players respond quite well to others. They're almost bored before they even started because it's one thing. But give me 2 or 3 things they might have to do, and it ramps up. What about directional practice then? Would you say it's directional as well then?
Yeah, as much as you possibly can, make it directional. If you're playing with players that play in a format where they use offsides, I try and make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
Like I said, and it will always come back to me for the amount of time that we have available with players. In academies, they're very lucky; they get lots of time with the kids that they're working with. Grassroots coaches get a very small amount of time, and I always go back to a little formula. But if you're talking about lots of teams that I see, not everybody, but lots of teams, they'll spend maybe 15 minutes warming up, often without a ball, doing some ladder work, and all right. So now your hour and a half session is now an hour and 15 minutes, and it's not really because you've started late or we've got people turning up. So you're now down to however much you've got drinks breaks in there or whatever. So all of a sudden your hour and a half doesn't become an hour.
Yeah.
It becomes probably closer to an hour. Stoppages, etc. Yeah. And within that, you've got your other bits of practice that you're going to do, and then maybe out of that hour and a half that's been broken down to an hour, you might end up with 20 minutes of a match. So you're talking about our job is to develop players, but we're only going to spend 20 minutes of an hour and a half doing it. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So if you look systematically in terms of, we haven't developed amazing players over that. Potentially that's because of the session design that we've incorporated. If players aren't playing that much and games being called off in winter for whatever reason, well, it's no surprise that we don't have players that are coming through. They're training an hour and a half a week, but really it's an hour. You've got academy kids that are training 3 times a week and playing regularly. How hard is it to catch up with those kids?
You've got one set of players potentially losing a season every 3 seasons, and you've got one set of players that are probably keeping on 2 seasons every 3 seasons.
It really is hard to catch up.
Yeah. Just a question whilst we're on decision making then, and I think we kind of touched on it earlier, but in terms of matches, so under 7s, under 8s and under 9s, the foundation phase, you read a lot about players just staying on the ball. You should be on the ball all the time. Shouldn't be passing it, just be on the ball. That automatically takes some of the decision making away. What's your kind of view then on a match day? If you had an under 7 or an under 8 team, would you encourage them to be making the right decision? So there's times where you want to be dribbling the ball. There's times perhaps when you might want to make the pass. And you don't tell them when those times are, but you help them and then you let them make that decision. What's your kind of take on that?
I would question whoever said don't pass, just stay on the ball. I would massively question that because if you look at anything, it's you would dribble to pass. You might dribble to shoot or whatever it might be. There is a purpose. It's not just you're dribbling for the sake of dribbling. If you've dribbled and you've attracted a defender and somebody's now free and you've created an overload, even at 7, some of these kids will understand that. Fantastic. Recognise when to give it. When you're, when you're in a situation that's potentially not favourable for you, but favourable for your team, you've created space somewhere else. Definitely, if you recognise that would be a good decision, make a pass.
Yeah, I think that's been our point. And we do hear it. It's quite a lot about the boys should just stay on the ball and they shouldn't pass the ball. And we get criticisms out of team over passes, but we don't tell them to pass the ball. What we say is, you share the ball and the teammate's in a better position than you are. That's kind of, you decide where it's going to be. It's up to you, but if you're in a better position, you keep going. But if you think the teammate's in a better position, you share the ball then. But I think if you say to a player, just stay on the ball, they've got nothing to think about now. Headers got to go up, they can just literally just try and beat legs the whole time, and you're taking away so much different skills with regards to thinking, scanning, looking, decision making. And I get that means more touches, and I get that means them maybe being better at ball manipulation, but it also takes away a whole lot of cognitive stuff that goes on. Where I think we can do both.
Yeah.
Certainly encourage them to get on the ball first and do what you can with it, definitely. But if you create a situation in which there's a teammate's in a better position than you are, then you share the ball.
I think you see it more so, I think, from some of the players that are academies and then come back and play with their grassroots team, more probably under 7s, under 8s. And we play some of the teams that are kind of put together with academy players where they just kind of stay on the ball and that's it, and that's what they're encouraged to do.
I would definitely try and get a balance in there. We mentioned it earlier about the balance football diet, but that equally has to come in a game.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that you might find out, even at the youngest age group, is you get someone who's athletically a little bit better or athletically stronger or faster, whatever it might be, or more agile, but they might be more experienced as well. Even at 7, they might be playing for 3 or 4 years, whatever it might be. So they've mastered that ball quite well in terms of where they're at compared to some of the other kids. But that doesn't last, the following year or 2 years down the line. So they need to have an understanding of when to, recognise when to dribble, when to pass.
Yeah.
So even from the youngest age groups, you've got to try and gain that understanding rather than actually, I can beat these all day because I'm quicker or stronger, or whatever it might
Things
be.
can change.
Yeah, well, I've definitely seen that even in my under 10s team. There's been players that have kind of just dominated in previous years because they're physically bigger, they're good technically. But as actually some of the boys have caught up, and also teams that get a bit more tactically better as they get older, then they are maybe not making the right decisions when to pass and dribble, and they're not as effective in games.
Yeah. And that might come from not having practiced it earlier on when they had the opportunity to practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you've got time, a couple more questions. That's all right. I promise you let you go. But I've got two I really want to ask. One is really about us as coaches, the best way in which we can improve as coaches. What tips you might give us to say that if you're really serious, got a mark about trying to be better, maybe think about doing X, Y, or Z to improve your ability to deliver your practice and support your players. Apart from your coaching courses, obviously.
No, I don't know about that. They're free, so they're free. The one thing that I would strongly recommend, having been involved with the programme since 2015, is get a mentor. It's invaluable. From my perspective, I have people that I go to and I ask questions of them, and I go and observe them work, and I have a saying when I'm not working, I'm networking, and I'm constantly out asking, can I come and see you work? It's quite an important thing, really, rather than just thinking everything. Go out and constantly see stuff. I had my UEFA A license as a coach, but I'd done it in sort of 2012 when I'd finished it. But the following year, I went back and observed the UEFA B license because the course had changed. People on the course were asking, well, why are you here? My big bit was actually, I want to know what you know. I want to be in a better position. So don't be afraid to keep revisiting learning as well. I think would be an important bit. Qualifications, in my opinion, are just a piece of paper. They help get you through a door and stuff.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep learning. You can't think, actually, I've got a qualification. I now know that. Courses are constantly being rewritten. Go along, observe. Even if it's not right for you at the minute, but you might turn around and say, look, I'd love to be a body on a course and do some running for you. Coaches on a course would love that. If they get the chance to stand on the side and observe other people rather than running and being fatigued. So volunteer, get out, see other people work as much as you can. Recently I got to watch, I've been to see 2 different countries work, and I've observed their national coaches. You mentioned about playtime, national team, 10 minutes at the end, do whatever you like, lads.
Yeah.
Playtime, even for senior international footballers, which was really interesting for me.
Yeah. Made
a note of it. So I would always go back, get a mentor.
Yeah.
That would be my first thing if you can. If you're local and you're working in a Chart Standard club, I would suggest trying to get in touch with the FA Coach Mentor Programme. I would strongly recommend that. The other thing I would really do if I was, is I would try and learn about the people that I'm working with. So if I'm working with children, younger age children, try and figure out as much as you can about them, rather than it just being the football stuff. What is it that the kids at that age are into? how can I use that in terms of designing sessions? So, lots of kids nowadays are into Fortnite, etc. But there's loads of other stuff that's come about through, talking to my daughters. There's a game called Roblox. I don't know if any of you. So you're aware. Yeah. So now it's actually Fortnite's. It's gone to we can use some of it. But what's the next thing? I'm constantly looking for how can I use these in my sessions, rather than just being the football content, because that will only get you so far, and it will only hook in a certain audience. Can you bring more in? That's one of the things I would look at.
We just designed a new presentation for our younger coaches that come in, a bit of an internal kind of coaching mentorship thing, if you like. And the first slide kind of says what it's about and what it's not about. And our first thing is it's about child development first. I mean, you've got to understand that before the football, that comes first. You've got to know how kids think, feel, and what they do, because if you can, that's the empathy point a bit. If you can relate to what it's like to be an under 5 or under 6, you've got a much better chance in supporting their process, right? Yeah. What about videoing sessions? Would you recommend that as a thing? Or
if you're lucky enough to have access. I mean, we are lucky. We have GoPros and the microphones, etc. So we are lucky that we can do stuff like that. But you might end up just going even real basic and being able to have someone film you with a smartphone, which again would be a nice luxury if you can watch it back. One of the other interesting things that somebody has done is use their phone to record voice notes while they're coaching, so they can listen back and hear what they're saying, rather than have somebody film it. They've just had it in their pocket, used an earphone.
Just get the audio at least. Yeah.
So they've been able to do that. And the comment came back, and it was, I can't believe how often I said that. And I asked myself, why was I even saying that stuff? Why was I talking so much? And they didn't realise how much they spoke when they listened to it back. So using technology, if you can use technology, if you're blessed to drones or whatever it is that you've got access to, then use it as much as you possibly can. But it's just work within your means, yeah. But the audio one, it was quite powerful when you listen to yourself back.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be actually.
I've got a final question.
I've got a question.
Go on, you get it first.
I just want to ask. We spoke about football. Futsal's coming on the horizon. It's on the horizon. It's a big thing. The FA are pushing it. Pete Sturgis has got a book out there, which is very good actually. We're doing it with our under 7s and our under 10s, and I personally think it's great. It's a great alternative to just playing football 2 or 3 times a week. What's your kind of take on it? Would you actively encourage coaches to go out there and learn about futsal, go on courses, things like that?
Yes, as much as you possibly can. Obviously, depending on what's delivered by your local county FA would be one of the things I'd look at. There's lots of people that are interested in it, but the demand doesn't seem to be that high in terms of getting on coaching courses. From what I understand, I would love to see more people get on there. Locally, we're very lucky. We've got a guy called Louis Melville. I don't know if you know Louis.
Yeah.
So Louis fantastic, and I would, Louis is also a mentor, so he would be well worth getting involved in your club and your sessions.
Right. Okay.
But what Louis is very good at is he looks at futsal and how that can translate into football as well in terms of your local environment, even down to the speed of the game, getting it in, you've got 4 seconds to play it in, little things like that around quick decision making, anything that's transferable. Because you mentioned about decision making earlier, taking some of that stuff from other sports, futsal being one of them, and you incorporating it in your sessions can definitely help player development. The biggest issue that we face in this country is facilities when it comes to futsal, and I'm sure you appreciate that, because the futsal diehards will tell you it's got to have the goals. It's got to have the goals to be futsal. So I think that's one of the big ones that we have. Hopefully, moving forwards, there'll be some investment in that, and it will drive the standard moving forwards.
Okay. Brilliant.
So my final question, that's okay. We've said an hour. We've gone over that with you, Kevin. So, but my final question really is, I don't know if you can answer or not, but the future of football and coaching. I mean, I think we're always not guilty, but we kind of look at the way maybe Man City have played over the last 3 or 4 seasons and what clubs do at Liverpool and things like that, and we kind of gravitate to all the headline stuff. But naturally, football evolves and changes, and if we're coaching 7 and 8 year olds, we need to think what the games are like maybe in 5-10 years time, not what it looks like now. What's your thoughts around that? Is there things that we should be thinking that might be happening in the future we could embed now, or is it just too much of an unknown to worry about that?
So as coaches, I think, this is me guessing, It's not me
crystal
saying.
ball.
Yeah, if I could see in the future, I'd have Friday's lottery numbers. Apparently, it's 105 million.
Is it? Yeah.
I think there'll be more emphasis, on a personal note, on specialist coaches. So people that specialise in working in 5 to 11s, people that specialise in working in 12 to 16s, etc. But equally, specialist coaches around positions. So at the minute, the only specialist coach that we have is a goalkeeper coach. But why? Why don't we have a specialist striker coach, or a finishing coach, or a crossing coach, or a ball striking coach? Potentially, if they ever introduce like roll-on, roll-off subs, I don't know if they ever will, but you might end up with special teams, a bit like they have in the States, where you've got the kicker that comes in, someone who's a set-piece master. That player that comes on, well, they're going to need somebody to coach them. So I think there might be an element of specialism coming in, or specialist coaching coming in, sort of longer term, not any time immediately. But I know, some clubs, they do that. They take the players off. They might end up with, the 13s, 14s, 15s. All the strikers will go away and work together. And when they do that, the midfielders, they go away and work on finishing. The midfielders will work on, the combination plays, and the defenders might just work on defending against those strikers that are in there doing their finishing. So they're just doing their job over and over and over at the older age groups, rather than.
So you might get more focus around specific areas of the pitch, maybe, and having someone lead on that. Yeah,
that could be somewhere where the game might go. I'm not sure.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Kieran, thank you so much for your time. I think there's a few takeaways there from me. First of all, was it Richard Horner? Was it you said was your mentor?
Yeah, Richard Horner.
I'm going to say to you that I think you did pinch one of his things, because having been on a couple of your sessions, if we ask you a question, I can guarantee what we get back. That's a question back from you. I think you might have stolen that from him, but it's a very effective tool. And I was told once by a teacher friend of mine that the smartest kid in the room isn't the one that knows the answers; it's the ones that asks the right questions. And I think that's probably a good way of putting it.
And if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's never happened to me, so I'm all right. And you bit around what Ben Bartlett said about the player as a syllabus. I hadn't heard that before. I've followed a lot of Ben's stuff. I hadn't seen that, but that's a great quote. And I think if you build your coaching practice around that as your starting point, you probably can't go too far wrong. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think the balanced football diet is a great quote as well. I think that's and I remember that from the workshop a couple of weeks ago. I think that's excellent. Trying to just keep it varied.
Kieran, thanks so much for your time. Good luck with the coach mentorship program. We've had it at our club. It's fantastic. It was a massive resource for us. Tony Privet was one of the guys in us. He was awesome, brilliant.
Feel sorry for him.
But it couldn't shout about it enough. And I think clubs are crazy if they don't jump on those hours and try and get some of that kind of an outside view into what they're doing and things. It's always done in such a positive way. You don't feel like you're under any pressure. It's always very supportive of things. So I'm sure you'll be inundated with requests around that, and I hope it goes well. Hopefully, if you're up for it, maybe we can pick your brains again in a year or so's time and see how things are and whether we've got those specialist coaches in place.
Definitely.
Is that right?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, so that was the interview with Kevin. Go on in, Mark, kick us off.
Thanks for that. Wow.
That's why I start.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for that, yeah. Wow, that's the first thing I'll say is wow. I thought it was a fantastic discussion. I've got kind of a couple of pages of notes I've made here on the things that we've kind of spoken about. It was as good as I was hoping it was going to be. We covered so much on practice design, from talking about some of the critical things around keeping it fun, the relationship around players, the fact about how Kevin uses whole part whole, and I love the quote "serious fun." And I know you've used that a lot in the past. Yeah, exactly. I think he might have stolen that from you, or you stole it from him. And I just think it was great. And I think one of the big things for me, the balanced football diet, which I mentioned at the end of the interview, was great. Keeping a balanced approach to your practice design and even your matches. But the other thing that I really liked was around using the different approaches, like constant, variable, random. I just such a big thing for me. It links into the balanced football diet. Using these different approaches are just, I think it's just really important as a coach. There's times when you want to use all random approaches. Sometimes use a little bit of constant, not a lot, a little bit of constant. And I think I thought it was brilliant. Really, really good.
it's hard, isn't it, obviously, over an audio format to kind of get into detail around session design, practice. And we've seen Kevin in practice doing the sessions, and they are superb. And it's the idiosyncrasies, it's the little things that make a difference, isn't it? The words that are used, the size of the space, the interrelationships with the players, and the way their communication kind of goes across. It's those things that, we probably haven't got enough of that in that hour interview, but hopefully people who are listening can get a sense of that's what makes you kind of maybe a really good coach or kicks you onto that next level.
Yeah.
The practice is important, and getting that planned and set up right is really important, but all those other bits around decision making and player ownership and relationships and putting the person before the player and stuff. And I think, to be fair, we've mentioned it comes across quite a lot in our previous podcasts.
Yes.
Either from our own conversations or with other guests on as well. So the themes tend to be, quite consistent. Yeah. And we don't want to be preachy to people. We honestly don't. That's not the idea of this, and it's to be challenged back and learn ourselves. But it's hard to argue against some the things that Kevin was saying.
Yeah.
There was no massive surprises for us, I don't think, which is quite reassuring.
No, for sure that he articulated them a lot better than we've articulated them in the recent weeks. But I think there weren't a whole lot of surprises there. I totally agree with you.
I love the thing about giving the players maybe 2 or 3 things in and out of positions, and without getting too overcoached on this, I think you could do that with under 7s. I think you could, if you're a back player, what are the 2 or maybe just 2 things with the ball and 2 things without the ball. Yeah. Maybe on a little laminate, a little picture of, you could have you could let them choose which player they want to put on it, but one of their teams that they support, their centre back on there, or something. You don't want to pigeonhole too much, but just a player that characterises what you're trying to get across, and what a great visual to kind of work on 2 things with and without the ball. Yeah. And maybe it'll keep us quieter as coaches on the touchline when we can almost give a card and say, how you get on these 2 things.
Definitely.
And the 1 to 10 countdown thing, I think, was a great example of how you could possibly do some of that individual ball mastery work, either as a group or encourage players to do it in their own space and time at home. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's been simple, right? It's just keep it simple, and it's and inventive and simple. Easy for me to say. Yeah. Keep it simple. Don't say inventive.
Yes. Yeah. Can edit that bit out. Bit out.
I'll leave it in. It was your mistake, not mine. So stay. Well, hopefully it was a long episode already, so we won't go on for too long about it. But hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Kevin's a great guy. I mean, the FA over here, there's no question. They've got good intention to try and do the right things and focus on that and that grassroots base. I think we've seen it ourselves. It's palatable that things have improved over at grassroots level. Sure. And even our own experiences. We're certainly, however much we've got a long way to go on our coaching journeys, we are certainly a lot better than we were 5 or 6 years ago. Yep. And a large part of that is what the FA have done around supporting us, directly or indirectly through the club that we work with.
Yeah, agree.
A couple of final things then. Mark, your blog.
Yes.
What's the situation there?
It's out in the next day or so. It's going public, yes. So cool. We're very much looking forward to receiving feedback on the blog. The blog is obviously, I guess, a little bit more my views on things. Scott's going to be the first one to give feedback on it.
There's a comment box, so I doesn't like comments on it. There's no pressure. We've had to build a whole website around this for you to get this blog alive, so there's no pressure at all, Mark. But no, we have got a little website now. It's very, very basic, and it really is only there's a platform just to say a little bit about who we are in case people are bothered, but there's no reason why you should be. But more importantly, Mark's made the effort to write the blog down, and there's some good stuff in it, and we'll share it on the website and link it into Twitter. Yep. The website is www.thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. Yep. The Twitter feed is @soccercoachcast. You can email us at info@thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. And any feedback around your blog, around the episode today, previous episodes, or anything you want to see in the future,
it's greatly received.
Again, I'm so sorry. We've had some emails, we've had some questions as well. We can't cover it, I haven't got the time. But for those that made the effort to write into us, thank you so much. We will pick it up in the next episode, right? And we'll refer back directly to those because we are grateful for the communication we get back. Again, some really nice feedback from people in the UK and the States mainly, and some questions around formations that you asked for previously. So we will pick that up.
Perfect.
Yeah, sound good?
Brilliant.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks to Kevin again.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark, for setting up. And have a good week.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.